In this world, the mayor of a town takes 2 human items from a locked place in the hut and gives them to some people. The man asks for 5 silver coins for 2 and buys them in disgust, thinking you will just throw them away later. The people in the village don't seem to mind, because they are glad that their village is finally rid of the evil servants of God who overshadow the people in this world. They wonder why they are able to use magic in ancient times, but there is still no answer. So the people continue to recite the spells they like for different purposes at different times, including the current time of war. In a dark place in the forest, a paid wizard casts a spell to attack some people, but while he is concentrating on it, he is hit by a sword right in the head. This shows us that magic is powerful, but that doesn't mean that the Almighty is invincible against other things. For example, if a sword flies at him, the person casting the spell dies just like that. How this mage is mercilessly killed, our protagonist Aldous, with a sharp and terrifying gaze in his eyes against some assassins who seem to come after his life, and when he asks them who they are and why they suddenly attack him, the assassin can't even retaliate because he is too scared. How the others are killed extraordinarily by this powerful sword magic. Aldous incarnates more swords to keep the assassin from escaping, but he killed him, seeing no point in keeping the man alive. But there were more hidden assassins in the trees, and even if they launched a sudden attack on Aldous, he easily blocked them with his assassin sword. The assassin was surprised because he had sensed it, even though it wasn't difficult for Aldous to sense his bloodlust from the beginning. Aldous actually didn't want to kill anyone except for this assassin. Initially he continued to attack Aldous with his fun sword style. Aldous didn't want to waste time, so he sent this man's sword flying, as he was still bound, wondering how a wizard could be this skilled. Aldous stopped his thoughts with his actions, answering that he wasn't a wizard but a swordsman, as he swung his sword to the right through the man's neck. After that, he returned from the forest to the prosperous port city of Thoria. Thanks to the blessings of the forest and coastal trade, this city was the second largest city in the kingdom of Nagras. Aldous informed his friend from the mercenary group Ted about the attack on him. Ted asked him if he really killed them all without getting any information from them. Aldous replied that it wouldn't be beneficial, even if he continued to do so, as they were targeting his life. Killing them was the natural choice. Ted explained to him again that it would be better if it happened differently. But for Aldous, he just didn't want to go through too much trouble and wanted to be done with it. Another member of their group named Norris, who was an archer, and Ophelia, the wizard, knew all of this. Norris was an awkward person who would kill those people more cruelly than using his own abilities. They were completely themselves when they asked him if he knew who those people were. He answered without exception, noting that those people seemed to know everything about sword magic. Ophelia stated that if they knew, it would be a good opportunity for them to connect with the military through Aldous's military mention. However, they encountered some direct attitude problems with their general, who tried to ask Aldous to join the military, but Aldous refused directly to the general, while stating that he was not obligated to teach his sword magic to the general's troops. They asked how he could repay them, and he actually knew the general when he was young, during a mission to escort a merchant, and then fight between the military and bandits occurred. There were more bandits, so the soldiers seemed to struggle. After that, some of the bandits also tried to loot the merchant, but Aldous used his sword magic to confront them, and the news about it caught the general's interest, bringing him closer to Aldous to join the military. The general said that joining him meant having a better income and daily needs fulfillment that Aldous, as a normal person, couldn't have. But Aldous didn't care at all and mocked the general, asking him to sign a contract if he really wanted Aldous to join. 500 gold coins per month was his payment, which made the general angry to hear because it was 500 times higher than what he himself had. The soldiers told the general to calm down, while Aldous just said goodbye and left to take care of his own business, instead of wasting time there. Aldous admits that he is a more arrogant general, so he says no, and also clarifies that his sword is magical and cannot be taught to others. Ophelia tells him that even though it is like that, he should not refuse the general in such a rude manner, embarrassing him in front of everyone like that, This will only make the general hold a grudge against him. Norris chuckles while agreeing, saying that's why Aldous creates more enemies, as Ted often says. Ted advises him not to laugh at such things and admits to Aldous himself that his power is definitely terrifying, but he shouldn't increase the number of his enemies. Aldous understands what Ted means, and because he owes a debt to Ted and the others, he doesn't want to cause trouble for them. So he agrees to behave his best when dealing with nobles in the church, even though they know how difficult it is for him. Initially, Ted bet 3 copper coins on Aldous, still not showing any discipline. Then Ophelia joined in, betting 5 copper coins on Aldous, not showing any discipline due to clumsiness. Norris immediately bet 1 silver coin on Aldous, not knowing what discipline is at first. After that, they went to the Forest of Casses, located in the south of Thoria. It has been an important source of fuel, food and herbs since ancient times, thus becoming a pillar of Thoria's development. However, it is also home to many wild animals and unexplored areas, where monsters reside. This time, Ted and his group came to this forest upon request to find a good place for tree logging. For this request, they needed to venture into the part of the forest where monsters reside. Ophelia stumbled upon a place that shouldn't have any problems since the road seemed well maintained, and it was also close to the main road. She mentioned that the quality of the trees around here was also good, so they should choose this place. Ted informed the others that it had been decided, so now they had to start cleaning up the monsters around this area. They began by clearing out the beast's nest nearby. Then Ophelia shouted for Aldous to pay attention. Aldous told her that it mainly belonged to them for now, as he was only participating temporarily, so he didn't have much of a connection until Ophelia reminded him that it was never too late to join them. Since then, they had been working together frequently, and Aldous started to feel like a member of their group. Aldous said he would think about it, and then asked if she still hadn't given up on finding her former friend. Ophelia tried to make him understand that it had been a year already, and if she hadn't found any clues, she wanted him to understand the meaning behind it, but Aldous exclaimed that it was only 1 year, which was a short time to find the friends they wanted. Ophelia understood, but Aldous suddenly interrupted, wondering if someone was being attacked nearby. While Ted didn't wait and immediately charged towards the location without thinking of forming a strategy, Ophelia and Norris knew they had no choice but to follow Ted. Despite that, Aldous's personality to dive in and help anyone, he liked how kind Ted was, so he smiled and followed them deeper into the forest. When they arrived, they saw a large group of bandits who seemed to have already killed the traders and taken over their carriage. Aldous warned them about the bandits, and Ted suddenly realized it was too late. The bandit archers started shooting arrows towards Ted and the others. Ted stepped forward and blocked the arrows with his sword, thinking the bandits wouldn't let them go now, and they would have to engage in battle. After that, Norris asked his Aldous to make sure to protect him while he shot arrows. Aldous then used his magic sword to cut down all the arrows that came towards them without fail. As the bandits thought they had successfully cornered them, Norris knew which one he had to target, so he aimed at one of the bandits and shot an arrow into his chest. Ophelia asked Ted for the signal to use magic, to which Ted responded that it wasn't the right time yet. The bandit boss they captured got desperate, so he ordered everyone to charge and take out the archers and wizards. Referring to all of this, Aldous took it personally to make sure to let them know that he wasn't a wizard. He threw some swords towards the back of the bandits and used his magic sword to stab the bandit leader in the head. However, it didn't stop there. The controlled ones started spinning around. Meanwhile, he slashed the neck of another bandit. Ted was engaged in a direct battle against the boss of the bandits. The bandit boss kept Ted busy fighting, but just when he thought he would send another bandit to chase after the archers and wizards, he noticed that all the bandits were already dead. He was surprised to see how they could have died. Then Ted informed him that he was the last one left when he put the bandit boss to death. After that, they examined the dead merchants and their supposed guards. Norris thought they couldn't do anything now, so they had to take whatever they could and go back. Ted agreed to it and told them to avoid carrying anything heavy that Norris asked for. Aldous followed him to check on Carrie, But when he went there hoping to find gems or spices, he was surprised to see an article inside the carriage. Aldous asked him if there was a problem, and Norris went out as Aldous followed to check the carriage. He saw two little girls inside with shackles on their bodies and trauma in their eyes. Ted took the children out, and he was disturbed by this sight because it made their situation even more complicated. They thought the girls were still child slaves, so he suggested to Ted that they should take these children back to town. Ted admitted that he needed to think about what to do because these children were not just objects, but also twin siblings, which made the situation worse. Everyone asked them what was left behind by the other humans, and they were surprised. Then Ted asked him if he really didn't know what it meant. Norris laughed when he found all this strange at first, but then he explained to him that the actual human objects were people who were bought or sold for money. They could be anyone, from children sold by sinful parents to prisoners of war, and the shackles were used to bind them. They limit themselves from having any freedom that is not protected by the law, since they are considered objects, unlike normal slaves. Norris replied that slaves are still considered human beings, while human objects are fully considered as objects. They can be treated however the owner wants, like cutting off body parts or anything else, including taking them alive. He stated that if someone abuses a slave, their reputation will worsen. But if they abuse an object, people will only say that someone is bad at managing their products. They manage their products in such a way that it is too big for humans to penetrate. Humans have clothes, Ted added. These twins are also a problem that Aldous is not aware of. Ted asked him where he was raised, knowing something common like this, because twins are considered taboo children since they are said to be evil god's disciples who bring danger to the goddess. Aldous knew that this doesn't make sense, as Ophelia told him that the goddess is known as the greatest existence in this world who created the earths and loves life. In the previous war in the divine realm, the evil god named Grace God confronted the goddess and the people who hurt her. The twin demons are the front line Aldous mentioned. The reaction changed slightly when the twin demons were mentioned. Then Ted told him not to do that scary face and thought that Aldous might hate the goddess, but putting that aside. Ophelia stated that the church believes that all the twins were born with unforgivable sins to be borne by. Aldous asked her if she believed in that story, to which she replied that it was just a myth according to her. But regardless, living with that burden was extremely tough for any twin. As the night grew closer, they finally decided to take the twins with them, and it was mostly Aldous's decision. Ted said it might be okay because he didn't want to leave the twins there alone. However, Ted mentioned that if these children were normal human objects, they could sell them in town. But since they were twins, no one would buy them, because the twins were always discarded right after Aldous was born. Aldous asked what would happen to these twins if they couldn't find a buyer, to which they replied that unsold items would either be killed or something bad would happen to them. Aldous insisted on asking for an example, which made others understand that Aldous was planning to take the twins with him. Norris answered that the twins were not treated well at all. Not only that, but with the shackles on their feet, they couldn't even walk properly. Aldous thought it was a problem, so he went to the twins and used 3 magic spells from the formula to analyze, disarm, and release the synchronized power on all the shackles. Then Ophelia came running anxiously, calling Aldous to tell him that the shackled objects couldn't be removed that easily because all the shackles were connected as one. They were arranged in such a way that if someone got rid of them, the rest would explode and burn. But when Aldous's explanation reached his ears, he released all the shackles from the twins' arms, and the other leg was surprised by the sight, as Aldous said it wasn't a big deal to delete all 3 at once to make sure they wouldn't trigger. Ted and Norris started laughing as they saw another strange action from all of this, while Ophelia screamed how it could happen. Maybe she asked Aldous to explain how he did it, and he answered that he just released everything at once. He said it was impossible to use many spells at the same time without chanting anything. Ophelia wondered why he thought that spells needed magic, because it would be more flexible not to use it like that. Aldous stood up after that and declared that he would take both twins with him and take responsibility for them. And then Norris asked if he was serious about it. while Aldous said he would give his share of the goods from the train as a reward. Ted tried to make him reconsider because this decision was not beneficial to him in any way, and this object was a foreign human to him. He wouldn't make any money from them, and the city might not even let them in. Aldous said it was true that he didn't benefit from this, but if what Ophelia said earlier was true, then he thought leaving them both was too irresponsible. Ted told him to adapt and mentioned that since then, the situation wasn't too bad. He didn't want to leave the kids. Aldous apologized for the issue and assured the twins that he would never let something like this burden them again. After that, he went to sleep while the twins wondered what was happening because this had never happened to them before. The next day, they were left to return to the city and continue their journey. The way Aldous told Ophelia was by using a spell to release the magic. It was just a misunderstanding on the witch's part. He took an explanation from a swordsman who didn't need to shout to use his moves. Ophelia said that magic was completely different from swordsmanship. Then Aldous asked her if that was the problem. Then why did their bodies move according to their desires without them having to chant or process it? He couldn't argue further. Ted added that it sounded interesting because no one really asked before why their bodies moved when they wanted to, just like Norris asked him if this meant using magic for him was as easy as walking towards them. Aldous replied that would be right. Ophelia still wasn't used to it since using 4 different spells at the same time was still something difficult to do, just like that. And they also didn't say they had to try it. They invited Aldous to their party if that was the case, while letting someone else be unusual because this vacation would be in vain. Ted mentioned that he would welcome him with open arms. Aldous only replied that he would think about it, as Ted said to others not to let anyone know about the twins because it would cause more trouble. Aldous remembered that he still had to think about the twins, because they were still scared and hugged each other tightly with the fear that Aldous gave to the twins. He found children's dresses on the train, while there was still some uncertainty. The gates of Thor City were already visible, but when the guards were active, the gates saw the twins' reaction was not necessarily normal, but rather angry. Norris approached the guard and told him not to look at them angrily because they were just escorting them, but the guard insisted on bringing them in. The twins would cause chaos in the city. Norris approached the guard and slipped some coins into the guard's hand, and the guard understood his intention behind it, and asked them not to cause any trouble inside. With that, Aldous successfully entered the city with the twins. Once they were inside, Norris called out to Aldous to pay him from the money he had paid to the guard that Norris informed him about. Once again, he needed to be extra careful when walking with the twins and try not to create any more enemies. Aldous is grateful to him for the help that Ted answered. It's not something to worry about. And now they will go back to report their findings. Ophelia told him that if he needs help with anything that requires a woman, she will help as much as she can. After that, they left, and now Aldous thinks he should go back to the inn where he usually stays, hoping they will suddenly have enough rooms for the twins. He heard a man shouting when he saw the twins, and once people noticed, they asked why in the world there are twins in this dirty city. They believed it to be a sight for sore eyes because it was nighttime, but Aldous had to keep moving from one end to the other. I hope it won't be as bad as this when he returns to his lodging, as the innkeeper kicked him out because of the twins. He didn't want to keep them even though Aldous offered to pay according to his wishes. All of this grudge or something has brought the twins to his lodging wherever he goes. Everyone seems to have a hatred for twins worse than he imagined. Aldous sees them as twins because they seem incapable of harboring more hatred, and thinks he should quickly do something about it. Then a girl calls him, and asks if he's looking for a place to stay, and if that's the case, she asks him to stay with her for a while. Aldous approaches her and happily agrees to stay with her, but the more important question is if the other two can come along. The girl initially answers that it's not a problem to bring the kids, but when she realizes that these kids are actually twins, she is left speechless for a moment. But somehow, after a few moments, Aldous enters a room with food in his hands. Remembering how the lady let him stay but at double the usual rate. She was very helpful, at least not a bad person, so now it's Aldous's turn to bring the food to the table, and ask the twins to come and eat before the food gets cold. But Aldous notices that they seem to not be eating properly, so he just finishes it, shares the food, and goes to sleep, leaving the food on the table. After a few hours, Aldous can't sleep because he's worried about the twins, so he gets up to check if they're sleeping without eating. Thankfully, the plates on the table are clean, which means the twins ate after he went to sleep, wondering if they can't eat properly with people watching them. Aldous observed that these were shivering twin children and still clinging together. He couldn't help but imagine what kind of care they must have received until now, just because they were twins. Aldous felt sad for them as he placed a blanket on them, while reaffirming his determination to protect both of them. The twin siblings didn't have a good past like all of this because even though they had been living together for so long, they had their own difficult situation. But it wasn't like this. It started when they realized that they were not normal. After that, they didn't obey their mother's instructions and sneaked out to play because people started throwing stones at them when they saw them, and the children realized their existence as twins, while also being hated at the same time. Their parents screamed when they found out and hugged the twins while apologizing to them. After that, they didn't sneak out again because they remembered the outside. But their peaceful life soon ended when their village was attacked by wild animals that killed the twins' father and their mother. She was very eager to support the twins alone, and in the process, she worked too much until she fell ill and died half a year later. The day when the suffering began in the lives of the two twins, when their door was forcefully opened and several people from the village came, they brought children and locked them inside the hut until they found buyers who would take them. However, they were servants of an evil god. The girls hadn't even finished mourning their mother, and half a month later they were taken out of the hut and shackled before being handed over to the buyers. The twins couldn't forget the villagers' disgusted faces. Since then, they spent their days locked inside a moving carriage. Every time they arrived in a town, they would be handed over to someone new. The person in charge would change their treatment towards the twins, and sometimes they would be given a piece of disgusting hard bread to eat. When a man came to see them, they hoped it would be the end of their suffering, but it only led to more torment, torture, and beatings from that person. The twins wondered why they were being treated like this. They couldn't understand the reason because they lacked knowledge in everything. In the end, they understood so far that they were actually called servants of an evil god, and that they wouldn't be defeated by adults if they didn't constantly defy them and get a little bit of food. Soon they want to go home and see their parents, but there's nothing they can do. They return to the twins. Even though they are twins, they are just children who have to go through fears like if they express their feelings or cry, will they be beaten again? Or if they talk back, will they be hit? So they completely shut themselves off and close their mouths. The only thing the twins can do is hold on to the last bit of warmth by hugging each other tightly and suppressing their emotions. All this wisdom, these unfortunate twins, until one day a change occurs. Aldous finds these twins, and when they first see Aldous, they think it's just another person who will torture them again. But for some reason this time, Aldous's eyes remind them of their parents, and it's only then that they realize that Aldous doesn't hate them. He is the one who releases them from their shackles, carries them on his back, and even provides them with food and a place to live. The twins don't understand how they should react when he offers them food. I thought maybe he would still hit them if they dared to touch the food. They see Aldous's troubled face, and when he goes to sleep without cleaning the table that the twins started eating, it's the first day they can finally sleep comfortably after being freed from the torment of hunger. The lives of the twin children are still worrying, but that's just the beginning. The curious boy's life and the twins' perspective. The boys go out in the morning and come back in the evening. He tells them to sit with him and eat, but the twins are still afraid to move. However, they like staying inside the warm room where they can eat in peace, without anything scary or painful happening to them. Like a dream come true. The only time they feel scared is when they leave the room to go to the toilet and others see them. The twins hear everything that is told to them to avoid being seen together. But since then, they are each other's only family, and Al is the only one they can't stand to be separated from, even for a moment. Now, in the current evening, Aldous is bringing food for the twins as usual, and the twins are sitting in the corner. He thinks it wouldn't make a difference from any other day if he didn't do something about it. So everything is going smoothly. Sitting next to the twins, he takes a handful of food and asks one of them. The twins hesitate, but after seeing his friendly smile, they open their mouths and Aldous feeds them. She enjoys eating that food while Aldous feeds his other twin siblings with a spoon. He tells them that they can eat slowly and notices that the twins are actually crying. He asks them if the weather is too hot. But anyway, after this incident, the twins are able to eat with the child. They wonder what Aldous means, and then he thinks it's the right time to ask the twins what their names are. That's what the first twin answered for the first time. The girl's name on the right is Philia, and the one on the left is Rihanna. After half a month passed, Aldous told them that they would leave the inn. Philia and Rihanna saw him talking to the innkeeper about it, and apparently they had to leave because the twins were seen by other people that Aldous told them he rented a house, and he would take them there now. Aldous took the twins to his house, which was located just outside the city, and he assured them that they could feel comfortable there. Aldous told them that they didn't need to worry about being seen, so they could run and play here. He asked them if they were happy, and the twins' expressions showed that they liked this place better after moving to their new home. The twins became less cautious, but they still couldn't speak properly for all of this. And that's when the problem arose, when one day all of this came back and how surprised he was to see that Rihanna was feeling unwell, trying to wake him up and asking what was wrong. After Aldous put her to sleep and examined her, he found out that Rihanna was running a fever. He hoped it wasn't something serious, and while Aldous couldn't solely rely on the church healer or the ongoing mission of Party Ted, he thought he had to do something himself. Philia asked Aldous to do something about Rihanna's condition, fearing that she might die if he didn't. After looking at her lying face and thinking until he remembered it, someone once told him that he could cool down a feverish person by cooling their head. So Aldous placed a wet cloth on her forehead and added some medicine to a rice ball, giving it to Rihanna slowly. Philia wondered why Aldous was going to such lengths for them, and when she realized his anxious face, she asked him what was wrong. Reluctantly, Philia asked him this time why Aldous was so kind to them, even though they were wicked servants of God. He told her how he learned it. Everyone who becomes their enemy will be cursed by the goddess, and anyone who is kind to them will eventually be cursed as well. She can't hold back the trembling she's experiencing. She never asked for anything from her for free. It took a long time for Aldous to realize and tell her that he knows Philia and Rihanna are not servants of the evil god. Philia didn't expect that answer when she sat down and said it to her. Everyone was deceived by her, the goddess, and she is just a normal human like everyone else. She told her that the reason her parents were kind to them is because they also knew this fact, that she and Rihanna are not the only evil servants of God, but they belong to themselves, Philia's children. Remember that, she said. Her mother cried earlier, and this is surely the reason why. Aldous also stated that he knows that's why he will do everything to protect the two of them. So he doesn't want Philia to call herself an evil servant of God again because she and Rihanna did nothing wrong. Philia and Rihanna cried with relief that day, and Aldous became closer to this girl the next day. Rihanna's fever went down, and then Philia, who had caught a fever, recovered well, and all this time they stayed by their side until they fully recovered. This time, Aldous is happy, because the twins can sleep more soundly than before. Meanwhile, in a flat area, a woman stands on a path where people travel through. She has a strong feeling that what she is looking for will soon come here, so she decides to stay in that place. Return to Aldous's house, in his usual home. He welcomes the twins every time she comes back, as they are ready to ask for food when they are hungry. After that, he tells them that he will prepare food for them soon, but he has to peel some apples. The twins stay by his side as if he belongs to them, a safe place. And when the day turns into night, Aldous usually reads them stories until they fall asleep. But every time Aldous goes back to her bedroom and lies down, he finds the twins by his side. The next day he brings skewers for them, and it is the first time the girl has them. They keep it and chew it eagerly, and when Aldous asks if they like the skewers, the twins express their happiness by smiling at him. For Aldous, it feels like it has been a long time since he spent peaceful moments like this. But he still has some problems because Ted and the others come to Aldous's house and ask if he wants to start working again. Aldous says no, wanting to be closer to the children, with a fearful face. While Ted's concern is that Aldous has been rejecting all those recent invitations, as if he doesn't want to earn income again. They were worried about him, but at the same time happy to see Aldous getting along with the Norris twins. Norris asked Aldous if everything was okay, and if he should start working again. Aldous also got a good job, some information for him. Norris asked Aldous if he had ever heard about the beauty that appeared on the main Ally Road. He didn't notice it while this rumor was spreading throughout the town of Thor. When someone took the main road from Thor to the capital, they would face a young woman standing there alone. As she claimed, she had challenged every mercenary who passed by, and undoubtedly defeated them all. Aldous asked if she was a bandit, to which Norris replied that the woman didn't take anything, and even if she challenged people, none of them actually died or got hurt. If someone refused her challenge, she would let them pass. Norris stated that she was strong but seemed like a harmless weirdo. And despite some people, no one considered her a problem. Aldous asked why some people found trouble, and he answered that it was because of their pride. If they let a weird person become them, they couldn't walk with their heads held high. Aldous understood that the client was the Lord of Thor, and when the woman was on the road, refusing to give her name or any request from the Lord of Thor was to negotiate with her and tell her to come to the Lord's mansion. Aldous asked why God wanted to ask mercenaries for this when he could have sent his own soldiers. Norris said that maybe God didn't want to send his messengers himself or risk being rejected. He got his request, 2 gold coins. Aldous mentioned that it was too little for 4 people. Someone else answered that they were actually handling another request while giving this one to Aldous, because they thought it would be good for him. Philia and Rihanna asked if he would go out, and he asked them in return if they could stay at home and wait for him. He assured them that he would come back and asked them not to worry. After that, he immediately set off to the location of the request at full speed. I thought it would usually take about 2 hours to reach his destination, but to arrive there quickly, he used his magic flight while pretending to run so that others wouldn't find it strange because in this world, flying with magic and using less magic while doing so is really beyond belief. Some random mercenaries were being defeated one by one. The audience was shocked to see the woman taking down 10 people in a row, and at the same time, all of this arrived there and quickly stopped before she reached the sight of others. The woman was a little disappointed because she couldn't find anyone to challenge her, even for 10 seconds. But without hesitation, she asked if there was anyone else who wanted to challenge her. She didn't mind if they all came at her right away as she stood there ready to crush them. Then, a mercenary stood up to challenge her next, and the others hoped she would give him a good fight. Gandalf admitted that it was true, holding his weapon since before he was born. After hearing the woman's name, he pulled out his small knife and attacked her with his spear. But suddenly she disappeared from his sight and reappeared standing right above his spear, swiftly approaching with her knife at his throat as she declared her victory. The mercenaries were shocked to see how strong she really was, and Aldous was one of them, surprised no matter how he looked at it. The speed she showed was not something an ordinary person could achieve. She announced again that if anyone wanted to challenge her next, they could step forward. After that, Aldous asked the crowd to let him through as he walked towards her, and the others tried to warn him, but he still went ahead. She thought that he was the next challenger and smiled, preparing for the next fight. But Aldous clearly told her that he was here to negotiate and actually didn't plan to fight, which initially annoyed Nothing. And while Nothing, she kept trying to throwing a knife towards him without warning. She used his transparent barrier magic to block the short sword when he asked her to listen to what he had to say. He told her it wasn't funny to aim at someone's throat who came to negotiate. She told him he wasn't interested in talking to him, but if he really wanted him to listen, then his ally would listen. He needed to convince him by fighting. Aldous knew what she wanted was just a fight, while she warned him that he could convince her if he could defeat her, as she accused him with the intention of settling it quickly. Aldous used his earthstone magic to form a wall of earth that easily passed through it, and told her he would make better use of these stones. Then she formed objects that could be thrown from those pieces of stone. It was not normal for Aldous, but before he had much time to react, the nail rained down on him and Aldous used his barrier magic to suddenly block everything with another magic. This time, the fire attack came at him from his focal point, and Aldous managed to dodge it with his agility. He quickly sensed her presence behind him, so Aldous turned his body in the air, avoiding his path. He could see her well enough. So to face her, he increased his fighting level by shooting a direct wind attack towards Aldous before his ally knew that he would be finished if he did it. Accepting this attack directly, he bowed, and used his barrier magic at a certain angle to deflect the attack and send it elsewhere. He asked her who she was, and Aldous asked the same question to her. Meanwhile, the audience around them were amazed to find out that she was actually a magician, and Aldous followed her. It was the first time Aldous saw someone other than him using magic, which created questions in his mind about who she was. Their fight became more intense as time passed since she appeared. There were no signs that she would go easy on Aldous, while he was trying to fight back with the chance to use magic just to make sure that no one around them doubted him. She could see that, so he asked why she was going further by imitating the fake spell just to hold him back, but when he looked at the people around them, he understood that she wanted to keep it a secret. So she decided to get rid of all of them and use her wind magic to send all the mercenaries flying 100 meters away from them. Aldous stood tall, observing others being tossed around. He noticed that some people were still around, so just looking wasn't enough. He conjured a bigger spell this time, after seeing everything, to make sure those people ran as fast as they could. 2 of them were directed towards Aldous, and he faced them head-on. He formed a sharp magical barrier to deflect the attacks. She told him that he could now give it his all since he had removed the obstacles his ally faced. Aldous answered that there was no point in asking him to negotiate, as it was futile. Nail informed him that it was still the same, and he would have to defeat him to make him listen. Now, Aldous decided to fight for real, as he unsheathed his sword. The image of Aldous's fighting style was nothing short of impressive. As his sword flew through the air, accompanied by magic, he asked if she still wanted him to give it his all. He asked to make sure he wouldn't be defeated. As soon as he showered Nail with all his sword strikes, it became difficult for him to block them all. The swords kept coming at him, countless in number. He tried to parry them with his own sword, and then used a barrier to block them. But there were still many swords left. He had no choice but to keep moving, dodging them. He wondered what would happen if he just attacked that area, and if Aldous should cover herself this time from all the incoming stones. Bale flew above him and launched a few light magic attacks. When they saw each other, Aldous did the same thing, and they stared at each other challengingly. They unleashed their powerful magic attacks without anyone holding them back, and it all clashed together, creating a huge explosion. This time, the explosion was even bigger than before. After the explosion subsided and dust started to settle, Aldous quickly approached with his sword. Nail was surprised to see that Aldous was actually a swordsman. Aldous was pleased that someone finally recognized his true identity, and with the next swing, he sent his dagger flying towards Nail's neck. Aldous defeated Nail without hurting or injuring him at all. Afterward, he asked Nail if he was satisfied with that and if he knew he had lost. Nail smiled and called Aldous his lord, but Aldous didn't understand what he meant. Meanwhile, in the city of Thoria, the twins were wandering around again out of curiosity. They wanted to roam around the city once, and their peaceful life had truly come true. Philia and Rihanna were very happy to see so many big houses and people around. Philia ran forward with joy, but accidentally tripped as an old man came to ask if she was okay. The old man checked if he was injured or not, and when he saw another girl, he asked them which one of them was the sister. The old man smiled when he mentioned that both of them looked similar, but for some reason, he noticed that their appearances were too similar. And that's when he realized, "We are twins." The old man was shocked, so he quickly looked around first before telling the twins that it would be difficult for them. He looked at them with pity, as the twins didn't expect that reaction from a stranger. Then, the old man warned them to make sure they wear their hijabs properly, and quickly left without letting anyone else see their faces. It was the first time the twins realized that there might be some good people out there. Besides that, Aldous is now back to being Aldous. She mentioned that she didn't expect Aldous to be that strong, while Aldous is still frozen, asking her about who she is calling him God. She stated that she was clearly talking about him because what she was looking for was the limit of human potential that she wanted to surpass, and now she has found it. It is fitting for Aldous to become her god and serve under him. Aldous wants to avoid getting involved with her and wants to ask her who she is. She mentioned that its power is similar to her, so he asked if she is the same as him, and answered that he didn't understand what she wanted to say. He took it as a way to ignore their question. She told him that she is a fair servant, no more, no less. She convinced him that she will always answer his call, which is only heard by God, which is more troublesome than anything she says. He mentioned again that he came here to tell her to go and visit the Lord of Thoria. She answered that if this is a command, then she will agree with Aldous' thoughts. There are many things he needs to talk to her about, but this request is her priority for now. She mentioned that she will fix the damage that occurred in their fight. So she used her magic and filled all the holes with stones just like before it happened, as if there was no fight happening here. Seeing her skills, Aldous realized that he could do the same thing. But for someone other than himself to do it without a spell is strange to him. The job is done after that, but Aldous remains cautious until he takes her to the Lord of Thoria's house. The warrior at the gate made sure she is the one mentioned in the description, so he agreed to let her in. Aldous didn't have to accompany her, so the guard decided to give him a present. However, she wasn't pleased because he wanted to ensure that his god didn't come along. She didn't care about this place or even the Lord of Thoria. Aldous had to do as he was told, so he asked for confirmation if it was a genuine order. She was momentarily confused, but then she realized that if it meant giving an order, she would comply. He informed her that it was indeed an order, and asked she to meet Lord Thoria. She listened to the order and agreed to obey it immediately. After that, she ventured to the mansion alone while he returned to the city. He couldn't help but think that the world had changed since then, as he hadn't encountered anyone who could challenge him like that. Since meeting her, something that has never happened before, there has always been a possibility that someone stronger than him is out there that Aldous has yet to face. However, he wants to take care of himself, because there are currently some people who need to be taken care of. He goes back home and, as usual, is warmly welcomed by Philia and Rihanna. They tell him that they made lunch themselves this time, and prepared some sandwiches for him. Aldous is happy to see them cheerful, so he suggests they eat together. Then he hears a knock on the door, so he asks both of them to quickly go and hide behind him. He sees a nail on the door, and wonders why it's there and why they didn't tell him that someone came here to report that they fulfilled his orders. Aldous wonders what they are talking about, until it reminds him of the meeting with Lord Aldous. He remembers that something like this happened before. After that, he didn't want to comfort her so much. He says goodbye and tries to close the door, but Nail puts her foot between them and asks if there are any other orders to fulfill. Aldous refuses, but she insists on letting him focus on protecting her. In his heart, he thinks and tries to persuade her to rent a room to him. Then, he is told that if he doesn't have money, he will pay for his to stay. It is made clear that he is not short of money or anything. He just wants to be by her side in case of an emergency. Aldous closed the door because he didn't want she enter the house. The twins said they would stay there and guard outside if that happened. So Aldous stayed there while studying. She was very rough in the eyes of the ruler of Thoria, and he even refused the challenges from the warriors, who wanted to make sure of his strength. He declined the invitation from God to become his personal guard. Not only that, but the rough way he did it made them hold a grudge against him. Now, Aldous returned to his peaceful life, and the next morning, he prepared breakfast for the twins. Philia quickly sat down and started eating hurriedly. It felt too hot on her tongue. Aldous told her to eat calmly like Rihanna, and after looking at her closely, he imagined her eating like a squirrel. It was a peaceful breakfast for them except for one thing. There was a woman with white hair standing outside the house. Philia, who was Nalid, asked Aldous if the woman was still standing there. He told them to make sure she wouldn't see them. Aldous was still unsure about how Nail greeted her, but in any case she was always guarding the gate. When Aldous went out, she followed him, and sometimes even supported him in his pursuits. They worked together efficiently, and even if he didn't know her, he could still rely on her. Slowly but surely, a strange sense of trust developed between them, and Aldous wondered if it was okay to let it be like this. Later, when it rained, Aldous saw the twins looking out the window, worried about she soaked outside. She didn't move from their place to protect them, and the twins were worried if he didn't have a home or a bed. Meanwhile, Aldous was surprised to see that she didn't even take a break on a rainy day. Then the twins came and gave him a towel to keep her warm, because she must be cold, and acting coldly as if she didn't have a home. Reluctantly, she did what the kind-hearted twins wanted and asked them to go back to the back room. After that, Aldous went to that girl and greeted her in the morning. He told her that she had to stay at the inn on a rainy day like this, otherwise it would look like she was oppressing her. He reassured her that she would be fine, except for Aldous repeating it didn't seem like it. That's why she came here, but she still didn't budge. So Aldous told her to wait and asked her to use the towel in her hand. Then she expressed her gratitude for her consideration, so she took off her hood and dried herself with the towel. She was truly beautiful. Anyone couldn't help but stare at them, even if they accidentally glanced at them, and Aldous knew that, but he still wanted to stay strong for the twins. Then he asked her how she knew about the twins. She told him that she could sense their magical powers, and it was quite clear that they were twins because of their identical shapes and colors. Aldous became cautious and was reminded again that he knew nothing about this woman's identity or purpose. But he doesn't seem to dislike her. He's not sure if revealing the twins to her would be okay or not, but now he knows that Aldous asked for her opinion. Her existence is known as the goddess M, but she didn't ask her to ask abstract questions like that. But the answer is simple. No matter how she thinks of someone who doesn't even exist, the goddess didn't expect anyone from this world to be like that. I add that the same thing could be said for other gods too, because there is no god in the sky. Look at the earth too. If there were gods, they would be far away from humans. No need to worry because they can't reach there. Aldous was amazed by her words, and even if there is a place for gods and their messengers in this world, she said if she was right at that time, what the church believed and which she answered only they would know because she didn't know about people she had never met before. I know that the goddess hates twins, but around one person, at least there are 100 pregnant women with twins. It is a natural occurrence regardless of whether God exists or not. So hating someone just because they are twins is stupid and made up. I'm sure she won't worry if she tells anyone about the twins, and whether it's the twins or anyone else under Aldous, she considers it her duty to protect them too. Aldous didn't see any doubt or hesitation in her eyes, and she told him she swore to uphold whatever she said now. She swore for her parents and her mission to fulfill those words. He didn't get much from what she said, but now he decided to trust her. This was the day Aldous gained a mysterious yet powerful ally by his side. She introduced herself to the twins and thanked them for their kindness. The towel they sent to the twins seemed suspicious to her, and Nail was thinking about it. She might have to wait until they arrived. Aldous introduced her to the twins first, and then she asked Nail if she had a name. Nail answered that she didn't have a proper name before, not even a real name. Aldous was surprised that she didn't have a name and asked who she was. She told him that he could call her anything, but it would sound strange. The twins started thinking about what they should do. Miss No Name, Aldous thought, should think too. And since her name sounded good to him, he said that her real name was Nail. From now on, he asked her if she was okay with that. Nayle replied that she was fine with it, and she greeted them again, mentioning that she would be under their care from now on. After that, Aldous left as usual to Ted's morning star meeting place. Norris called Nail strange, and the fact that her identity was unknown was still there. Aldous stated that he was fine with her because he had no prejudice against the twins, and there were more unknown mercenaries out there. Norris mentioned that Aldous himself was an example, but aside from that, Ophelia added that letting the Nail stay alive in her house is still a bit unsettling. Aldous knows there won't be any problem because upon reconsidering, he simply denies the existence of the goddess as Ted said. If the ally is fine with it, then it's all fine. And besides, he mentioned that there are still rumors being asked by Aldous if it's about the grinder that came down from the Grinder Mountains. It is a monster that lives in the Cannabis Mountains, and it's like a mix of horse and buffalo species, and has 4 wings with sharp claws, which is known to be stronger than usual monsters, and therefore feared by many adventurers. Aldous stated that he didn't expect the grinder to come down anywhere. Norris added that recently the number of carnivores around Thoria has decreased, and it has caused an increase in the number of herbivores, making this area more attractive. I've been hunting grinders, Ted said before it became more efficient with a strong woman to suggest it might be related to this. Aldous asked him if he implied that it was his fault, and all 3 of them agreed. Ted made it clear to Aldous that even though the monster was dangerous, he shouldn't go around hunting them until it leads to extinction. Norris added that one should not oppose the ecosystem, while Ophelia didn't expect his words to have any impact. Aldous's hesitant apology caused them difficulty, and then Ted pulled out an invitation letter stating that the military was forming a conquering team to protect the grinder. They were pushed so much that they even asked mercenaries to join them. Ted hoped he could refuse, but since it was a personal request from the Lord of Thoria, he couldn't. This is where Norris said they would be happy if there was someone rough and anti-military. The man agreed to join them, and Ophelia repeated her sentence that she would be happy to have an unknown man of unknown level, and even an unknown way to drive away the monsters to extinction. Aldous got mocked by them, so he reluctantly agreed to help them. After 2 days of preparation, the team formed to subdue the grinder left Thoria and headed out to where the grinder was located. The expected areas were the plain fields, which were currently filled with many soldiers, and these soldiers had their hopes on Captain Deccan, who was leading them in this important conquest. Captain Deccan was pleased with it, and he also received help from Captain Druys. Captain Druys was known as the best sword fighter in the military, and the soldiers believed that he would not lose to the grinder, which was owned by 9 teams of military mercenaries who also joined the conquest. Deccan stated that they didn't need to rely on mercenaries, and that they could handle it with their own military strengths. The crew wondered if Deccan could get through that incident when he was asked to fight against a female mercenary. He was told that he had to defeat this arrogant female mercenary of the Lord of Thor. But when he went to confront her, Deccan proudly admitted that he would easily defeat her without even hurting her. The woman in question turned out to be none other than she, who went there on Aldous's first mission that day. She fought with Captain Deccan, but their fight ended abruptly when Deccan attacked her, and his sword was thrown in front of everyone, including the Lord and General Thoria. Deccan was left shocked at his defeat by a woman who didn't even move a step in the fight. His defeat became a hot topic, and all the soldiers wanted to laugh at Deccan for redeeming himself by achieving something during this conquest at any cost. While being on the side of the mercenaries, Ted considered the military's actions crazy, forming a ridiculous formation to be defeated by a grinder. Not only that, but Deccan didn't even get any wizards. They were ready to fight against flying monsters. Norris told the others that the military seemed to bring a lot of new recruits, and Aldous joined this conquest, as he said. Before that, the servant's Nail also came after checking the surrounding area and reporting it to Mr. Aldous. He didn't see any monsters or grinders around them. Norris asked him if he was serious about wanting Aldous to be their lord, which made him angry. Ted told them that it was time for lunch, while Ophelia gradually watched the flying Nail before they started having lunch in the field under the mentioned good weather by Ted. who usually beast kings appear in this area. Then Cuckoo mentioned that he and Aldous had already hunted about 50 of them. Aldous signaled him to be quiet, but Ted didn't find it strange at all and asked Nail if he wanted to join their party because he was very skilled. Nail answered that if Aldous chose to join them, then he would follow him. Ted took a short break because it turned out it wasn't bad to sit here since they could hardly rest from their work. While he thought the weather was very good today, while Ted preferred the gentle breeze and the shadow of a bird in the sky, but suddenly he realized that the shadow was actually not a bird, but something big. It wasn't a killer bird or anything. Nail told them that it was clearly a grinder. Ted quickly asked Norris to signal smoke, and the grinder seemed to be heading towards a different direction. The grinder went towards the location where Aldous's main power was located, and the spikes went forward after the grinder and were thrown down as quickly as possible to reduce the number of casualties. But at that moment, when they arrived, Aldous saw what happened when the grinder stood on top of a pile of injured warrior bodies. They asked for help, but the grinder was about to attack them. Well, Bale threw his axe at the grinder, stabbing its claw, while Aldous prepared a magic attack while singing a fake song so that he wouldn't be discovered by the warriors he had freed. The grinder avoided the fire magic by flying away, releasing its own sudden magic attack. The spikes blocked it, favoring Aldous because he couldn't use his sword magic in front of the military. The grinder flew away from there and started heading towards where the remaining soldiers were. Captain Drews stopped Aldous and asked him to use magic to heal the wounded, which Aldous refused because he couldn't use healing magic. Then, the Drew family asked for some potions or anything else, except letting them go, because they didn't think Aldous could chase after a flying target. Aldous knew it might be possible for him, but he couldn't because there were too many people present. Meanwhile, the smoke signal began to spread everywhere, wherever their formation was, and Captain Deccan warned the other soldiers, thinking that he wouldn't have a problem with 30 people together. Not only that, but he really wanted to be the one to defeat the grinder he desired, no matter what a soldier told him later about a shadow flying towards them. It was the fierce grinder, and Deccan was happy to see it. Finally, it happened. He instructed everyone to get ready, but even before he finished giving orders to others, the grinder was already in motion, and killed several soldiers in succession with its unstoppable claws. Deccan felt a heavy realization of what they were up against as the grinder rose back up to prepare for another descent. Deccan couldn't even keep up with the speed of the grinder, while it descended again as if something out of a nightmare. The grinder was much larger than him, and Deccan, being experienced, tried not to falter because it was his only chance to redeem himself. If he escaped, it would still haunt him as a regret for the rest of his life. He ordered the other soldiers not to do it out of fear, and watched as the grinder's claws, already injured, but not by the soldiers, attacked. The soldiers attacked as instructed, but it was only a matter of seconds before those who attacked were wiped out. Deccan watched them dying one by one right in front of his eyes, as the grinder pierced and tore them apart as if they were mere food for it. Deccan realized at this point that he couldn't do anything against this beast, and if he didn't retreat now, they would all be unsheathed. Deccan hesitated whether they could make a scratch on it, and then the other troops descended from their positions and blindly charged at the grinder that Deccan tried to stop them, but it was useless, since the grinder used a powerful wind-motion sword to cut down all the soldiers in its path along with their blood. The soldiers were everywhere, and Deccan felt helpless facing this terrifying beast. Almost all of the soldiers he brought were dead, and the grinder started approaching Deccan, causing him to tremble even more. The beast approached, and then an arrow came and hit the morning star with the grinder's beak. Ted's group arrived just in time to face the grinder, and Ted wasn't afraid to swing his sword towards the grinder's neck. But he couldn't get close to the monster because the magic won. So Ophelia started chanting her magic attacks to restrict the grinder's movements with ice magic. The grinder shattered all the ice and it didn't have any effect on the monster, but they couldn't give up here. So Norris kept shooting arrows while Ted continued to attack with his sword. They were barely able to keep the monster busy, while Deccan felt completely hopeless. He saw that these mercenaries were skilled and coordinated, giving them a chance against the grinder. But at the same time, Ted's shield broke and he was left with just his sword to fight the grinder. It wasn't as difficult to handle, and Deccan realized that they were cursed. He shouted right where Aldous was, as they needed him the most. Just as the grinder was about to attack with its powerful wind strike, one of its wings got cut off. Deccan saw that it was Aldous, the mercenary. Finally, he joined the fight against the grinder. He didn't want to hold back like before. Aldous landed next to Ted's group, while the grinder screamed in pain. Deccan saw that Aldous had thrown his axe at the grinder's left leg to make sure it wouldn't run away like before. Aldous and Nail wanted to finish it once and for all. Aldous swiftly decapitated the monster, ending the hunt. Deccan didn't expect them to survive this at all. Then he heard a soldier's voice behind him. He quickly went to ask the soldier if he was okay, but it was pointless. Deccan was the reason the soldiers were sent to the battlefield without any backup plan. Their reinforcements had run out, and not only that, they were saved by the mercenaries, leaving Deccan as the only survivor from his unit. Everything is for Deccan, and he knows that his life will be a nightmare from now on. He sounds shystic while talking to Aldous, asking him if they only took his head or his body as well. Aldous tells him that the body is worthless, so just leave it. Deccan looks at both of them closely and realizes that Nail is the same woman who started his misery. If she wasn't there, he thinks it would be better. They both notice Deccan looking at Nail, so he gives her a sharp look, not understanding any thoughts that oppose him. Deccan can't help but hate her even more. After that, since the Conqueror's grinder succeeded, the Thoria god and the military praise their actions because, according to the person who took care of him, the grinder was military, and Aldous doesn't remember that he only liked his peace more than going through all the trouble and being happy because he got his reward. The fact that the army is useless in battle and it is the Aldous and mercenaries who fought against the grinder is kept secret from the public. Now in Lord Thoria's house, Lord Marquis is sitting on his throne with Deccan in court as the Prime Minister. He asks Deccan if he knows the reason why he was called here, even though he was already there. Deccan realizes and tells him that even though he was given a chance to redeem his honor, he lost his subordinates, and in the end, it was the same female mercenary who took all the praise that Deccan asked for from them. Mercy. While the chief minister stated that he didn't care how good his sword skills were if he couldn't achieve anything with them, God told Costas that they shouldn't discuss the matter further. Since then, everyone made one or two mistakes. He said he was confident that Deccan would grow stronger after this incident, and Deccan nodded in agreement. God Marquis asked Deccan if he thought that the female mercenary was definitely strong, and if that was the scary part of someone so powerful roaming without any restraint. So he was afraid of that one day she might disrupt their orders, and the more dangerous part was that the female mercenary didn't care or respect Lord Marquis at all. Marquis marked it as a threat for no reason, and Deccan spoke further in his words. Marquis knew that the woman had a companion who was a rough warrior who had refused personal requests from the public in the past. Marquis found it disturbing, so he thought of something and looked at Deccan. Deccan quickly asked them to let him take care of the problem. The general ordered Deccan to focus on completing his current mission, or he could just take time away from his official duties to act independently. Costas also said he could train during that period, and they would give him 6 soldiers under his command. Marquis told him he was free to use them as he pleased, and this was his last chance to either get promoted or remain just a platoon leader. After that, Deccan left the courthouse and the soldiers on the street mocked him. Deccan was afraid that their mockery would stick with him for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, Marquis asked Costas if it was okay to send the entire company to deal with one mercenary. Costas said that sending more than that would be unreasonable and would make them suspicious. He hoped that sending Deccan would compensate for their lack of military power. He remembered that the fortress where he sent Deccan was currently empty and could be used for training purposes. The plan was to use Deccan in reality to confront Aldous and Nail, and if he failed to do so, they would simply deny any relationship with Deccan and Lord Marquis. So it would be better for Deccan to achieve a positive outcome, or else he might get into big trouble. Meanwhile, at Aldous' house, Philia and Rihanna were playing house with each other. They were playing with dolls of their parents and two cute little twins. Aldous watched them play peacefully and hoped that things would stay like this forever. But Aldous wasn't sure how long he would be able to protect them. He had previously thought about sending them to different locations for their internship, but they both didn't want to be separated from each other, and they even liked wearing different clothes. They also added Aldous's little house game to their play, and Aldous couldn't imagine letting them go away from him again. He realized that he had become softer, and his reasons for thinking like that were because the situation had changed a lot from before. Currently, every time he went to the city, he could feel that the atmosphere had changed around him, and the usual store he went to for ordinary things, the shopkeeper there seemed a bit strange in giving him something. After that, he went to get the usual medications, but the man told Aldous not to come to his store again. Aldous is now sure about it because something must have happened to people at that time. The innkeeper allowed him to stay with the twins before calling him out. Aldous remembered her, and the woman told him that the twins' presence was exposed to the public, not just what the woman said. She usually didn't leak customer secrets, but when the soldiers approached her, she had to tell them about him because she would be in trouble if she lied. And that's where the soldiers started asking questions from the customers. It seemed like she couldn't keep a secret, and Aldous thanked her for allowing him to know the reason behind this strange behavior of the people around him. He wondered why the military suddenly started investigating him, and the only reason could be that they lost face. Now he found the reason behind it. He went and talked to Ted and the others. They told him that the reason was clear, because after that, he went to the Lord's palace and caused a great chaos for the Lord and others, while also disrespecting them in front of everyone. Aldous hoped he wouldn't do that at all. While Norris added that Aldous was also blamed for taking over the credit for conquering the grinder, and in return, it was clear to the military that things became tense after that. Many things happened to them. Norris found a definite reason for the military to know about the twins after checking their background, so the level of supervision was no longer fair. But the Lord General and the leader had already started taking action against Aldous. This combination made him an enemy of the entire nation. So now Aldous is planning how to deal with all of this. Now back to the present. When Aldous arrived home, he sighed and thought that he might have to leave Thoria forever. Then she came and asked him what's wrong, but Aldous was more surprised to see that she could do anything, from cooking, cleaning, to preparing tea for him. She was a true servant, except her behavior was more like a wife. Now back to the serious matter that she informed him earlier, the military started taking action against them slowly. She suggested that if he had to leave and erase everything from the earth, he shouldn't do it because it would mean the whole country would become their enemy. Aldous tried to think of various alternative solutions, like should he lie down for a while and let the situation calm down, but it was still dangerous considering that the ruler of Thoria was involved in the withdrawal. Aldous had never met the Lord before, so he asked what kind of person he was. She answered that Marquis was a greedy and wicked villain without any sense or anything. Aldous never expected that the Lord himself would become corrupt like this, and he actually ordered she to be his plaything, while staying close to him all the time. Aldous asked her about the general she was heading to, and she replied that he was a village dog barking orders no different from a wild dog ally. He truly understood what she meant about the general, and was thinking of a solution. She told him to get ready to leave Thoria with a moment's notice later that night. Aldous asked what the strange wall looked like, and she answered that it was a barrier that only held the attention of hostile people outside. It wouldn't draw any attention when she left the shopping place until Aldous fell asleep from thinking too much. The twins watched him sleep, realizing they had been sleeping a lot lately. They felt a little famous, so they decided to go out of the house and head to the city, hoping Aldous wouldn't be mad. Philia wondered if the old man would still be there, thinking they might get some snacks. In the end, the twins were just kids, so they couldn't contain their excitement until Philia stopped because someone was standing inside in front of them. It was clear that there was someone inside, wearing armor at night with some bad intentions. After a while, everyone realized that the twins were not at home, which could only mean they had gone out. She felt uneasy, not expecting this to happen. So she held on to the house, looking out for them. Nail gave him a letter she found at the front gate, and it was indeed addressed to the female mercenary, which meant Aldous was shocked after reading its contents, as it stated that this letter was a summons for them to come to the northern fortress if they wanted to witness Aldous' wrath this time. It was truly crossed out because it was enough that everyone treated the twins' hatred fairly, kill the twins, and so on. Nail apologized for the situation that dragged the twins into it as well, and he answered that it wasn't his fault, but he was so naive. Aldous felt like he should have known that he couldn't hide the twins' existence forever. And the time he thought he had planned something for it because he knew firsthand how disgusting those people were, and asked her to give her orders. As for Aldous, he knew he didn't have time to ask or discuss with Norris or anyone else. He just left those people who worshipped the goddess and believed in sick things alone. But now, if it was a fight that those bastards wanted, Aldous was ready to give them hell, just like he asked for it by taking the twins. It turns out that one of the kidnappers of the twins is Deccan, who has a secret plan in mind to win the next battle that he knows is coming. Deccan joins the underground room in his house, and after going down the stairs, there is a dressing room where many valuable artifacts and other equipment are stored. Deccan came here specifically to take the sword that belonged to his ancestors, who were also soldiers. At that time, he heard from his predecessor, his ancestors, that they seemed to have participated in a defensive battle that everyone thought would end in defeat. But in the end, Deccan's ancestors came out victorious, which led to his promotion to general. Deccan was told this when he was young, so he shouldn't use this sword unless he was pushed back into a corner as a last resort. Deccan thought he should use this sword now, just like in the past, and that's what he used the sword for, hoping to win against the enemy. However, the power that comes with this sword comes at a price, but he mentioned that this is where the 2 kidnapped children might come in handy. So he took 5 rings along with the sword and set off to the fortress that was filled with hundreds of soldiers placed everywhere, as instructed for everyone to be ready to fight. Aldous and Nail also arrived at the fortress, and Nail asked what their plan was. Nail thinks she might suggest considering negotiations, but this time he doesn't want to forgive them all, even if they ask him to. He wants to show them an incredible fight, meant to fight with him. All of this becomes a big obstacle, and when he does it, one of the soldiers notices him from the washing tower. It amazes the soldiers to witness all of this, and it really works when he comes alone, making them think they underestimated the army. The soldiers consider it embarrassing, so they tell everyone to take their positions and not to be careless just because there are 2 soldiers who don't think they will be as strong as ordered. They can only observe his last moment, as the mercenaries ordered the soldiers themselves to open the gate, but before anyone could move an inch across the walls, including the gate, it exploded from a blast. After the dust settled, the soldiers were left cursed to see suddenly large rocks flying towards them and destroying these walls, regardless of the condition. However, it wasn't just the walls that were destroyed, as all of this and the nails arrived there too. After they destroyed everything, the formation of soldiers entered the fortress with angry eyes, and their soldiers still thought they would have a chance even after that. Then Nail immediately noticed him, because they knew who he was, and that's fair. Deccan warned Nail and Aldous that they wouldn't be able to get out alive. Aldous asked Nail if this was the Deccan he mentioned before, and Nail agreed. Deccan stood there grinning at Aldous, and before he could say anything else, he was hit by a sword thrown by Aldous. The sword left a small wound on Deccan's neck, causing him to panic and scream at Aldous for what he had just done. But for Aldous, it was just the beginning. He said that he wouldn't stop until they put their hands up. The twins knew they were superior in this situation. Aldous ordered all the archers to aim and shoot without missing. The archers followed the command, and Deccan declared that it would be the last time he had to see the unpleasant face of Aldous. And Neil didn't care about the arrows coming towards them. It was the job of the twins to deflect all the arrows, while Aldous used his magic to launch a counterattack. He used his magic to shape a metal blade and threw it at the wall, leaving a large crack. The whole wall shook and crumbled, trapping a dozen archers inside. They tried to escape, but it was futile. Deccan didn't expect Aldis's power to be this terrifying. Aldis told him that it was just a part of the wall, and soon the entire fortress would be like this. Everyone present would find themselves under a mountain of rubble unless they surrendered the twins. But Deccan refused to admit defeat in any way, so next he ordered the witch to attack Aldis next, and their combined spells would surely be stronger than any average attack. But to no avail, Aldis easily blocked their magic with their barriers and told them it was useless, while Deccan couldn't stand seeing the nail still unharmed. He said to his soldiers that they were fighting against a woman who was ultimately just a witch. So next, he sent in close combat troops before Aldis could use long-range magic attacks, but they didn't know how exceptional Aldis was, and Nail also joined the close combat fight, which actually belonged to them. Aldis told Nail that he wouldn't be able to hold back this time, so he warned the soldiers to approach him only if they had no attachment to their lives. He used his sword skills to cut off the hands of those who drew their swords against him, and for those who had spears, Aldis dodged them and cut off their legs without showing any signs of mercy. He continued this brutal battle, killing one soldier after another, and applied the same method when the other side's soldiers started doing it, thinking that taking them both down would work. Well, because their goodness was indeed like that, it was a good opportunity for the soldiers to be promoted as allies. Observing the attacking soldiers with greed, Aldis gave them death. Then let he explain that it is not displayed feeling sorry for them so that Aldis beheads them, the soldiers who set a bad example for others to continue violating. In this case, the essence is that Aldis and Nail have killed so many soldiers that no one wants to do it. They drain and make their lives meaningless like that. Deccan not only can see other soldiers afraid of him, but also feel it himself when Aldis steps forward and jumps right above Deccan. Deccan understands that this is the real deal while Aldis lands behind Deccan and proves his strength, making all those numbers advantage seem meaningless in front of him. Aldis used his magic barrier to block it, but what surprised him was that his barrier shattered as the blow and attack passed through its side. Aldis got grazed a bit and saw blood dripping from his cheek. He now realized that Deccan's sword absorbed both the magical attacks and the magic from the weapons, then converted it into offensive power as a counterattack. Aldis noticed that Deccan's sword was no longer glowing, which made him think that the magic must have been depleted. In this case, he decided to continue the fight, but without using any magic this time, and defeat Deccan purely with swordsmanship. Deccan laughed as if it was a joke to think that he could be defeated in swordsmanship. Then Aldis reminded him that he himself had never been a wizard in the first place, and Deccan and Aldis clashed again with their swords, making a loud sound as the battle continued. The allies tried to find a good opening, but somehow, Deccan managed to keep up with his movements and tactics. However, Aldis took advantage of it and used something that worked better for him than thinking about his speed. Aldis was about to leave a mark on Deccan, but Deccan blocked it with the back of his sword. Surprisingly, Aldis was pushed back. Earlier, Aldis had avoided using his sword with magic, but even though he fought with his own magic, his sword would break soon. He decided to put all his focus on Deccan's incredible speed and landed a series of diagonal strikes in just a few seconds. Deccan had trouble keeping his footing, so he ended up being pushed back, despite blocking all of Aldis's attacks. Cornered, Deccan became desperate and unleashed more power from his sword, which he kept as his trump card. Aldis was astonished and wondered where Deccan got all this magical power from. Deccan didn't waste any time and immediately struck Aldis with his sword and magic power. He had to use a lot of obstacles to prevent himself from getting hurt. Amidst all this, Deccan shouted at Aldis to keep thinking about where his magic came from. Deccan finishes him off and suddenly a nail rises from behind Deccan and surprises him with an attack on his back. But before Deccan can even realize it, his long sword absorbs the attack, completely nullifying it. Deccan, who remembers that he is the main target, decides to finish him off first. He attacks Nail with the same attack as before, and he can't process how he became stronger than before. Aldis tries to approach Deccan from his blind spot, but Deccan notices him and redirects his attack towards Aldis. Aldis manages to dodge, but this immense amount of magic power certainly didn't come from Deccan himself. Then he hears someone screaming, and one of the ER's wizards from the soldier army is in excruciating pain. As a result, his magical power is drained so quickly. The man looks extremely sad, and Aldous doesn't see anyone else with this kind of nature. Before he realizes it, he notices that he has a ring that seems to be causing the wizard's suffering. After putting everything together, Aldous understands that the sword truly hit him with the magical power of the wizard through the draining ring. He asks another wizard nearby about what this is, as they were all told that it was their miraculous power being enhanced by the ring. Decken tells them to be quiet and become one of them, using this method. At least after all, he believed that some sacrifices would become a great asset in defeating this rebel wizard. However, Decken put the magical output into full release, which made more wizards wear it. The ring suffered incredible pain and dripped from head to toe. Nails could also see that Decken was using his allies brutally, to which Decken responded that if he didn't like it, he was free to die because in the end, he would die in his hands now or later. They refused to believe that nothing Decken thought would happen later. Decken grinned, as he mentioned that if he was sure about it, they all knew he was planning something. And that's when Decken explained the role of the ring, and he had a total of 5 rings. He had installed 3 rings with a limit because they were in the hands of temporary people, while the remaining 2 rings rang without any limits. Aldous caught what Decken wanted to say about those 2 rings, as Decken himself admitted that both rings were already installed on the twins' fingers. Like now, the twins were fighting for their lives against the continuous magical drainage, so they couldn't just sit idle and cry out loud, hoping Aldous would come and help them out of this painful situation. Decken warned Aldous that the more he refused the magical power, the more drained the twins would be, and if he really cared about their lives, he should help them. Then he should just give up and get killed quickly. He slammed down the deck called trash while Ailey's couldn't tolerate the way this person kept being rotten. Decken exerted more magical power in his next attack, but instead of continuing to rampage, everyone knew that he had to stay calm and think of a way out of this situation. He knew it was wrong to move here, it would only put the twins in more danger. And Nail also asked him if they should retreat now. Aldous said confidently that these people wouldn't let the twins live if he retreated, so he had to fight against this bastard Decken. Currently it was their only choice. Decken showed no signs of stopping the flow of magical power, but suddenly the magic sword stopped on its own. Aldous assessed that the flow of magical power had been cut off, while Decken quickly looked towards the witches who had it. Apparently, they had taken off the rings from their fingers. Decken asked who allowed them to take off the rings, but it was clear that the witches did it of their own free will. Decken told them that they would regret it later, while he had to fight against Aldous and Nail for now. Nail mentioned that Decken didn't even have the trust of his subordinates. Decken didn't care. He only lost 3 idiotic pawns. He reported it to Aldous. The efficiency of the long sword decreased when the target supplying the magic was also far away, which meant that the twins were definitely somewhere inside the fortress. He decided to do it, to divert Decken's attention, while the allies could save the twins. But Aldous knew he had to be the one to divert his attention, because after that, all he had was a greater supply of magic power than his own, which formed a very large scale of sharp stones in the air and shot them all at Decken at once. Decken's attack became useless since his sword had just absorbed all the magic. The man understood that Aldous was actually trying to fill the long sword with magic, so it didn't need anything from the twins, and immediately continued his journey to find and save them in Decken's fortress. He didn't want to let them go just like that. Aldous threw another stone to block Decken's attack. The path instructed by Aldous was to keep his main opponent focused on him. Meanwhile, in the chamber's prison, the painful cries of the twins could possibly be heard around the place they were in. Seeing them suffer caused uneasiness, and even to the soldiers stationed outside, they didn't like this. The twins were suffering just because they felt they were wicked children, in pain, because these children were no different in age from his own little daughter. But they were called sinful sinner. They had to do their other tasks. The soldier asked him what they were actually doing now. locking up young and innocent children in that prison cell. The first soldier didn't say anything because they knew that no matter how they felt, their superiors wouldn't let it go if they didn't follow their orders. Suddenly, the twins' voices stopped, surprising the soldier, and he quickly turned to check. He saw that the twins were almost dead, and their eyes were crying endlessly for hours. The soldier couldn't help but pity them. The unfortunate children asked for his help at that time. The second soldier called him and said they should take turns, starting with the first soldier taking a break. He stated that it would be fine since everyone needed a break once in a while for the toilet and other things. So he asked for the key from the first soldier and continued his break. The first soldier understood what he wanted to say and asked the second soldier to take a break. He told him that he knew what the second soldier was trying to do here, which was to release the children and take responsibility. That's what the first soldier stated, taking full responsibility for it. On the other hand, the second soldier said that he couldn't let him be the only good person here because it was his idea, but also the way the soldiers wanted to stop the pain suffered by these twins. They noticed that the ring was on their thumbs, which looked suspicious and was surely the reason why they were suffering. Meanwhile, Tekken continued to use his magical sword attacks while Aldous kept himself protected and gave his magical powers intentionally to the sword at the same time. This time, it was difficult for him to continue like this, but he had no other choice. Tekken laughed because he enjoyed this moment of seeing the people responsible for their embarrassments suffer in front of him. And when he understood that all of this was an attempt to save the twins by providing his magical energy, he told him that it was a stupid idea to start with because his concerns about the dirty twins were pointless. He asked Aldous if the twins were really important to him, to which Aldous replied by asking if this nonsense about the goddess was important to him or not. He asked what sin the twins had committed to be treated like this, but Tekken was more concerned about Aldous's courage. He called the nonsense goddess that Tekken believed in trash, saying that following someone else's words blindly was foolish. He told him that they had no right to call the dirty twins, even though he himself was the dirty one here without any pride at all. Tekken took it personally to be talked about so lowly regarding his own pride, and Aldous's pride made him uneasy. Now Tekken wants to sacrifice everything just to make Aldous regret his actions of killing the twins. He decided to use every ounce of his magical sword to release them all at once. Aldous knew that this was a direct killing for the twins, and he had to stop it. But Tekken had already set the limit for the sword to be used on the twins, and said that there would be a failure. After all this effort to divert his attention, the allies told him to stop. But it was useless because Tekken clearly wasn't the type of person who liked to listen to anyone except himself. He used his full release of the long sword, and his surprise, the sword began to absorb the magic from Tekken instead. Tekken started to suffer from extreme pain that he inflicted on others, as if the sword was now draining his own energy. He wondered why this was happening. It happened because of the ring, Aldous thought. He thanked this miracle, and even if he didn't know what was happening, he took this opportunity to kill Tekken by stabbing him in the heart and ending the fight once and for all. Tekken couldn't react to his attack this time, and as a result, he started coughing up a lot of blood and then died. His body lay on the field, and Aldous thought he could finally go and save Philia and Rihanna. He turned around to look for them, hoping they would be safe. And that's when Tekken's sword started to glow brightly. Aldous saw the magical power of the sword. The sword was about to explode, and in the next moment, the entire castle started to shake from the release. A few minutes ago, Philia and Rihanna's army in the prison wondered what they should do with the ring. They thought about reporting it, but releasing the shackles would definitely get them into trouble. That's when the explosion happened, and its impact began to shake the prison ceiling. They realized they had to do it immediately and get out of there. So the soldiers tried to release the twin shackles, but they didn't have any time left as the prison began to crumble. The soldiers decided to keep the twins with them, protecting their bodies instead of escaping, and so the fortress continued to collapse. For some, a few minutes later, the survivors quickly rescued the injured side while Aldous managed to survive by crashing into his magical barrier. He didn't expect the explosion to be this big, so he immediately went to check on the twins and Nail. He went to the lower prison area, and after calling out everyone's name, he heard no response, and reported that the twins seemed to be fine. He was grateful that they were safe. Then Nail added that when he arrived, the twins were under the rubble with 2 soldiers making sure they would survive by protecting them with her bodies. He wasn't entirely sure if the soldiers were truly protecting them or if they had something else in mind, but their doubts were cleared when they saw the ring had been taken off the twins' fingers. Aldous collected all the pieces and respected the soldiers for their sacrifice. Then Nail asked Aldous what his plan was now, and he answered that they would soon leave the city because the military would definitely chase them again. He thought they should head to the royal capital Grand, which was much larger than Thoria, and also gather more information, hoping to find some clues about their comrades there. Nail agreed to join him, admitting that she remained loyal for her entire life, listening to all sides, and he was grateful that Nail was there to help him overcome this situation. After everything he had previously thought about being able to handle everything on his own and not getting anyone involved, now after this incident and seeing the expressions on the twins' girl and Aldous' faces, he understood that having allies was important for the safety of the twins. He smiled and asked her to continue following him, feeling the warmth in his hand that he needed to protect. After that, they first went to the forest of Causus, where the Nail was still standing in the lake as the mysterious enemy hid inside the lake, attacking them. Allies witnessed the fight, although it seemed like nothing had been caught by that monster. All of this was told to the twins, who were worried not to panic. He assured them that he would return soon after finishing it. They arrived at Causus Forest some time ago, and it was in their hands to journey to the capital city of the Kingdom of Thoria. They all asked him if they shouldn't go to the capital city, to which he answered that he was waiting to see how the incident in Thoria would be reported. He mentioned that they might even be forced to leave this country, which would be surprising after what they had done. He hoped he could at least get some time to explain everything to Ted and the others, but regardless, he thought of a good place for them to stay temporarily. And he noticed that the twins were still scared of what happened and clung to him. He reassured them not to worry because he wouldn't worry and let something like that happen again. He asked them to never sneak out again without telling him, and he used his magic to clear the wood around them. The twins saw that he made the area wider, more open, and brighter than before. Now he asked Nail to keep any monster danger away from them while making sure to hunt some animals for them to eat as requested. And now Aldous told the twins that he would start building the house. The twins were excited to know how he would do it, and Aldous began by making the foundation of the house. He removed the trees in a certain area and then used his earth magic to build a flat foundation. After that, he quickly processed the cut wood into a house. But at the same time, a monster appeared from behind the bushes, and as it was about to attack Aldous, a sword stabbed the monster to death, ensuring that the construction of the house would not be disturbed. The twins watched the process with curiosity and excitement, and soon the construction of the house was completed. However, it looked more like a warehouse. According to Aldous, he had to shape this house a little differently. At the same time, Nail returned from his hunt and brought some game. Aldous asked him, and he reported to Aldous that there weren't many dangerous monsters, so they could now start preparing the food that Aldous had prepared. Aldous liked the idea, and then he sent something behind them. At the lake, bubbles emerged from the water, and Nail also felt a slight magical force coming from whatever was inside. The monster, with its thick roots, quickly emerged from the water, scaring the twins as the bear was being hunted by her. Along with it in the water, Aldous told her that this monster seemed to be big based on the observed shadow of Nail. Aldous was busy with the twins, so she took responsibility for noting this monster and engaged with it without any fear. She saw that this monster was quite loud and disgusting to look at without delay. She used his ice magic to freeze the roots, binding and destroying the monster. It screamed in pain after feeling its limbs being destroyed according to their wishes. It was quickly resolved, so for the upcoming attack from this monster, he blocked them with his magic barrier and at the same time aimed directly at the center of this monster. However, the monster moved its limbs in a way that made it difficult for the nail to attack. He realized that this monster seemed to have some intelligence. Nail thought about how to end this quickly, and because using her light magic would not be effective when she was in the water, she still hoped to finish off this monster as quickly as possible. The nail decided to first remove this monster from the lake, so she shot her magical light knot at the monster, but on the ground next to it, where the monster flew, the impact of her attack, and immediately left its territory. The girl had a perfect opportunity to attack, so she froze the monster and then unleashed a blast of magic fire, burning it underwater. Aldous saw the monster emerge from the water, and soon after it was pierced by several beams of magical light, undoubtedly belonging to Nail. The monster was completely destroyed, blood scattered all over the lake. Shortly after, Nail emerged from the wet pond, soaked in red water all over her body. Nail told Aldous that the water around here was now unusable for them, but they couldn't leave because Aldous had already built a house here. She decided to create water through her magic, making sure to inform Aldous about it. Although she could be relied upon, Aldous had to prioritize protecting the twins first from now on. Nail would continue to follow Aldous's orders as usual. Then, Aldous felt he should ask her to tell him more about herself, her goals, or at least why she chose to serve him. He knew she hadn't told him herself yet. Well, then she answered that her reason for serving him was similar to the reason why the sun and moon exist. Indeed, she was certain that there was a natural occurrence like that. Although Aldous hoped for a clearer answer, Nail said he had just answered his question, and if it was true that he was not satisfied with it, he had to make his own question clearer. Aldous had something to ask him in a moment, so he asked if he would choose to serve him because she knew something about him. Nail replied that the only thing she knew about him was his own power that he personally witnessed, and nothing else. She said that if he assumed it was true, it would still happen, at least make sense to him. Curious about him, Aldous asked him if he was okay serving someone he didn't know. Nail answered like that because his mission was to find the strongest god to serve, and everything else became trivial to him. After that, he said he was going to be on guard while Philia asked Aldous if they could sleep because it was already night. Aldous was with the twins and he saw the commitment in their eyes as usual. Aldous knew he could trust Nail's words, and he also felt that he was a resident of this world who was not like him. However, his power was close enough to his, but the difference between him and Aldous was that he was born on this side, while Aldous's turned out to be from another world. He thought that he might not be able to understand anything about his current situation, even though the commitment meant he was still there. Meanwhile, Square One was deep in the forest, where various liquid-shaped objects were trapped in the trees with buildings that looked like they had been there for centuries. After that, they could spend some peaceful days, and Aldous realized that it had been enough time that had passed. Now he was getting ready, and told the twins that he would be leaving for a while and come back as soon as he could. The twins agreed, and Aldous informed the nanny that he would be leaving the house and the children in her care. She agreed to take the order, and thus they bid farewell to all the Philia and Rihanna. This decision was made to play in the yard, and they asked if she would play with them too. She had previously refused to play with the children, but she agreed to play with the twins together and asked what they would play. The twins decided to play house while Aldous walked towards the capital of the Great Dragon Kingdom. It was also the largest city in the kingdom, boasting a population of 300,000. This city had developed since ancient times through trade, and now it had become a place where people and all kinds of products were found. These were the things that made the kingdom thrive on its own and become a food hub. In this city, there was still a young information intermediary named Cesare, who sat all the time while taking care of his customers. Other customers came to him, and this time he was here to thank him for the good quality information. After that, Aldous came to Cesare to ask if he was the intermediary of information, and Cesare agreed that he was right about it. Aldous took a seat without introducing himself to Cesare, who replied that it was not necessary. Then he asked Cesare how much he would pay for some information he was looking for. Cesare was interested when he asked what kind of information Aldous was looking for. Aldous answered that he wanted to know some information about a woman who often appeared on Thoria Highway. Meanwhile, Cesare was trying to analyze all of this because it was a topic that not everyone asked about. He guessed that all of this must be about a 14 or 15-year-old and maybe a new mercenary who wanted to prove himself as a man. But Cesare, who seemed experienced, told him that this information would cost 5 copper coins, which was quite cheap since it had been a long time since the incident. Aldous handed him 5 copper coins, and Cesare told him that she often appeared on the street and challenged mercenaries with a knife, but always won. Her age was said to be around 18, and both her identity and her intentions were unknown. Cesare added that she stopped appearing some time ago, and from Aldous's disappointed expression, he thought Aldous was so disappointed. Until Aldous asked him if he could track her down, Cesare stopped him there and said that any additional information would also incur an additional cost of 5 silver coins. He gave him 5 silver coins without hesitation, and this behavior raised some doubts. Cesare's mind asked Aldous if he was aware of the approved Thoria's grinder incident. Aldous then added that the woman was said to have participated in the conquest of the grinder, and there she made a lot of money, an achievement that Caesar told her was unknown to this broker, and he mostly disappeared about 5 days ago. He asked if he knew where he might have gone, which Cesare answered that he didn't understand all of that. All he knew besides this information was the large number of recent victims in North Norn Fort Thoria, and according to rumors he heard, it seemed that this woman had been involved in it too. Not only that, but Cesare also kept information that said this woman was accompanied by a black-haired man. Suddenly, Cesare realized that Aldous matched the description quite well, and the change in his expression made Aldous ask if something was wrong. Cesare said it was just him thinking if he had anything else to share because he had already received 5 silver coins. Aldous stood up and told Caesar to wait for him here tomorrow, preferably before evening. After that, Aldous left to the upper floor, as if he had already signed up to stay here today. Cesare was curious about all of this, so he asked the innkeeper if that person was staying here today. The innkeeper agreed, and then Cesare asked for his name, which the innkeeper asked for 1 silver coin that Cesare paid him. The innkeeper informed him that the person registered his name as Terios. Meanwhile, Aldous also took care of it himself, because he was unsure. Cesare is clearly unsure because Aldous's information is much more accurate than other information. The fact broker also knows about the dangerous Thoria nail treatment, but according to him, Cesare might not know about it. And Nail becomes the person who carries out the battle against the Thoria military, as the event is only seen as an accident. It's understandable that they hold a grudge against Aldous and Nail now, but at least they haven't acted on it yet. They are officially their enemies because of shame, and for some reason, Aldous thinks Cesare still holds a piece of information that he suspects. Maybe he should ask Cesare tomorrow. Cesare tells him that the woman has made enemies with the Thor army, and supposedly the accident they experienced was actually a lengthy battle in which many casualties occurred, including a commander and several wizards and soldiers. Everyone thinks that his information is accurate, while the fact broker only knows that there was an accident. Cesare states that it's possible that the woman escaped after the battle. Aldous asks her if this information is accurate, to which she admits that it took her a day to verify it. Besides her, it's only possible for the National Intelligence Agency to know. Aldous believes that there is something to it. It's been 6 days since the battle, except Thoria didn't accidentally manipulate the news. It should have spread throughout the country, so it makes sense that the Thoria army didn't publish it. But Cesare hesitated. He almost mentioned everything except Aldous being there, which is strange because Caesar surely heard about him any time between the conquest of the miller and this accident. After all, Aldous wanted to take some precautions, so he decided to bait Cesare and check if he took it. Aldous got up, mentioning that there's already a lot of information, so now he will go and join his comrades as planned, leaving the capital in the afternoon. Aldous got up and said goodbye to Cesare, while Caesar politely replied that they will meet again when the time comes, giving off a fake smile. After that, while Aldous was on the road, Suddenly someone called him out and asked him to stop. They were a group of mercenaries who seemed to have come here to capture him, according to him. He didn't remember doing anything to be captured, and the people answered that someone else wanted him captured anyway. However, they ambushed Aldous all at once, but he easily disarmed them in one blow, after which, he disabled them in close combat. The attackers warned Aldous that he didn't even need to draw his sword against them, and then he warned them to mention the name of the person who hired them, or else they would die. The attackers told him that it was a Cesare who sent them. After Aldous found out where his next destination was, he happily continued on. While Cesare was sitting in the same place and enjoying his drink, the innkeeper asked him what was good about today. Cesare was talking to himself in the mind of the person who called him. It was true that Aldous was working with the female mercenaries, and Cesare knew that he would definitely know where to find them. The female mercenaries had planned for Cesare to find their whereabouts and then sell that information to the Lord of Thoria, who would be willing to pay a high price for it. Cesare thought about moving to a new and better house with that money and changing his lifestyle. Then he was startled by a familiar voice calling him, which surprised Cesare because it was Aldous. Cesare asked him why he was here when he was supposed to be in the capital where Aldous was. Aldous answered that it was his initial intention, but Cesare's bad behavior brought him back here. Aldous gave Cesare a helmet from the person who attacked him, but Cesare ran away. Cesare was shocked to see this turn of events, because he knew that the people he sent to chase Aldous were surely skilled. Aldous warned Cesare that being greedy would not end well for him, and there would be no second chances for Cesare. Cesare understood that Aldous was not bluffing, and then Aldous asked Cesare for some information about who he used to be. Cesare hesitated, but asked for 2 silver coins for the information, and Aldous gave them to him as usual. After Cesare told him that the news of the incident at the fortress had spread to Thor, and it wouldn't be long before it reached the capital, Cesare made sure that the ruler of Thoria had not published anything. But he didn't do it because he didn't want to leave the people who had stained him. Imagine everyone understanding that there must be mercenaries who might have started looking for him, and Cesare could be one of them. Cesare stated that he only sold information for money, and the information he obtained was about the people who destroyed the army in their fortress. They were defeated fairly by 2 people, a young female mercenary and a young man wearing purple cloth. He stated that both of them were said to have more friends, and Aldous couldn't just underestimate Cesare's skills as an informant. But that's not all until Cesare mentioned that Thoria Lord was not interested in the twins, but only the 2 mercenaries. Aldous was shocked to hear the words about the twins, and he asked Cesare if all of this was the information he had, and when Cesar asked him about the next topic, Aldous slammed his hand on the table and threatened to stop him if he ever revealed information about the twins. He personally would track Cesare to the ends of the earth and kill him. Cesare felt that this was more terrifying than before when he spoke with a trembling voice tied to that information. The threat quickly spread so that his threat would not happen. Aldous didn't care how it sounded, but he wanted to keep Cesare tied because he didn't trust him at all, despite his undeniable talent as an information broker. His unquestionable talent made him even more formidable in Aldous' eyes. He said to Cesare, "A facade that mercenaries fought. The Thoria army appeared in the capital 3 days ago, and then they headed to Empire Cesare." He asked them what it meant. That's what everyone told him, just giving information to Caesar. Cesare doesn't like being forced to spread false information, and if he doesn't do it, all threats to kill him are always an option. This will not go as Aldous thought. But Aldous just wants to make sure to reduce the possibility of something similar to the fortress happening to the twin children. He wonders if he should escape to a farther place. Then Cesare speaks up and asks Alice if he is really that strong, as the rumors say about him. He should go and make a big name for himself by defeating the 3 big demons. He says it loudly, proving that no one belongs to him. Maybe he will get what he wants from the match, and the mention of these 3 demons reaches its peak of interest. Cesare asks him for just 1 copper coin because everyone around here knows about them, starting with the first 3 demons, Bell Seeker, who has a territory at the foot of the Canobus Mountains, and rarely mutates into a small Tron monster, It has comparable strength to a grinder, and is said to be attracted by the sound of a bells. Aldous mentioned that it was as strong as a grinder back then, which could be subdued at any time. Cesar mentioned that there was something wrong with his logic. Then Cesare told him that if he defeated all 3 monsters, his country would be very happy. The second demon, called the Fourth Wing, which nested on a small island near the capital of the kingdom, is a giant 2-headed bird monster with 4 wings, causing chaos in the nearby waters. But his country did not have time to subdue it because of the tense situation with the empire. He was told that even defeating one of them would make him considered a hero. So all of this asked him about the last demon. Cesare stated that not much is known about the last demon, and it is rumored to be in the Caucasus forest called the Red Devourer. Aldous asked why it was only rumored, to which Cesare replied that no one has ever encountered it. Only the surviving humans say that it comes out on full moon nights, and the only witness is a strong swordsman who came out of the forest with severe wounds on the brink of death. The swordsman uttered 2 words before he took the last red berry and ate it. He also observed that on full moon nights, the Caucasus forest is filled with the sound of monsters running around, most likely the Red Devourers. They run away from people who have witnessed those monsters, confirming that the monsters run without paying attention to them, as if they are most afraid of something after them. People who have gone into the forest on full moon nights have never returned. That's all they know about the Red Devourer. So all of this mentioned could possibly happen. It's just speculation stated by Cesare. Not much is known to confirm anything, so he only included the Red Devourer because the 3 great demons sounded better than 2. Returning to the main topic, if the Red Eater, setting aside the other 2, makes his name big in the capital, Cesare agrees with it, and also adds that no normal person would want to mess with such a powerful monster. Aldous thinks that he should do it for the twins, because whether Thoria incarnates it or not, the twins are still hurt by them once. So if they're together, Aldous thinks it's the safest place for them. He thinks it stands out. Maybe not a bad idea to ask Cesare if he will be here tonight. Once Cesare confirms, Aldous tells him that he will meet him at night because it will end at that time. Cesare just noticed the night, so he agrees, but then he notices the next part and wonders what all of this actually means. Now, first in the mountain field, which seems to be the place where some adventurers go for requests. And indeed, it's so relaxed because all they know is that the bell seeker only reacts to the sound of metal. They have to come here unwillingly, because the request they have is that the medicinal plant can only be found in this area. So he convinces the others that at the same time they are most likely not to encounter any tragedy. Then, one of them slips, and when they notice the man's suitcase making the sound of metal sticking to the bell that was attached to the dead person's frame, the others think that someone is trying to subdue the bell seeker. But because these deceased individuals are now present, they will all meet their demise as the bell seeker emerges from the sound of the bell. All the adventures are now fated, as they know the bell seeker will not allow them to live for long. So when the bell seeker attacks one of them, the others try their best to halt the demon. However, none of them can even make a dent or scratch on the bell seeker, as his body is incredibly resilient. The bell seeker hurls the sword warrior with his shield, delivering a single blow that shatters the shield with its immense force. None of them have the strength or hope to survive in that moment. Finally, Aldous arrives and hurls his sword at the bell seeker. He feels a sense of gratitude for finding the bell seeker without needing to lure him with a bell. Now Aldous engages in a battle against one of the 3 formidable demons. The adventurers try to warn Aldous to stay away from this dangerous monster, but his allies mention that he already knows. When he leaps into the fray, the bell seeker eagerly lunges at Aldous, and this time, his allies do not hold back, even with spectators watching. Aldous effortlessly slices off one of the bell seeker's legs, astonishing the adventurers with his incredible strength. The bell seeker tumbles to the ground, and Aldous aims to swiftly finish off this beast. However, the bell seeker lets out a mighty roar and surprisingly regenerates his leg in a short span of time. Then, he vanishes from their sight. But for Aldous, he can easily track him down with his penetrating bell seeker. So he keeps moving around while channeling magical energy from our adventurers. We can see the battle happening at the same level they haven't witnessed before. Aldous takes a stance and directs his concentration towards Bellseeker. Aldous tracks his movements and successfully stabs the creature in the mouth with his sword to disable it. After that, all he has to do is cut its body into small pieces. It won't be able to regenerate. The adventurers can only watch as Aldous's sword flies with powerful strikes. The Bellseeker enjoys Aldous's daily meat. Aldous leaves the Bellseeker's head intact as evidence that he finished the job. He thinks it might not be enough for all these necks to burn the rest of the monster's body into ashes. He believes this should be done, and everything he does is witnessed by the adventurers up close. After that, Aldous just takes the Bellseeker's head and moves on to the next one. One of the adventurers asks for his name and he proudly introduces himself as an ally. Then he flies into the sky with his magic and reaches the island around the royal capital, which is said to be the home of the next big demon. While he was assessing the area around him, Aldous noticed something in the sky, but not as big as that. Suddenly a shadow attacked him. Aldous managed to dodge it and realized that this big bird must be a four-winged monster, as the description perfectly matched. Along with that, the monster was even bigger than Aldous had expected. However, he didn't have time to think, as the monster wouldn't wait for him and attacked. Aldous avoided the next attack and noticed that the monster started focusing its magic around its four wings, launching a magical attack towards him. He blocked it with a barrier spell, but Aldous suspected that this attack might make it a bit difficult for him to get close to the four wings. So he devised a strategy to shower the wings with his magic shots, but his spells didn't reach that far, not even making contact with the beast. Meanwhile, the four wings lifted themselves unexpectedly, and to Aldous's surprise, the monster unleashed a high-voltage electric shock towards him. Aldous guessed it was similar to the light magic, which instantly reached its target, but it proved to be quite challenging to differentiate the electricity as the shocks kept coming. He continued to try to dodge them, but the electric attacks surrounded his magical barrier. This time, he understood why no ship could withstand the attacks of this beast, and to defeat it, he wanted to close the distance he desired. First, he needed to track the electric attacks. Aldous dove straight down into the sea and used his fire magic to heat it up, creating steam. The steam surrounded only the four wings, just as he had planned, and now Aldous could easily track the next electric attack. He threw his sword and made sure to control them with magic to land on some of the wings, causing some damage. After that, Aldous threw the sword again, and this time he really cut off one of the monster's wings. The four wings started screaming in pain, while Aldous was already prepared for the next attack. The four wings tried to stabilize themselves in the air with their remaining wings, but before they could do that, Aldous came running straight up and beheaded the beast before it could react. It was a mission accomplished smoothly, and it was also fair. After that, Aldous made his way back to the capital with the monster's head in his hand. The people around him stood in shock as they couldn't believe a man could bring the head of the Bellseeker and four wings while still walking. The people on the streets kept talking, and he was also surprised when he saw Aldous holding the monster's head, as if it was not a big deal. He greeted him, and stopped as if they were bros. Everyone asked him where he should deliver it to get the reward. Cesare was initially shocked, taking his time to make sure that these heads were indeed from the two great demons. He couldn't believe Aldous could defeat them, even if he had just told him about it that morning. Aldous's answer was more than enough time left for Cesare. He fell silent and didn't care anymore. Now Cesare couldn't doubt all of these skills. He told Aldous that he could take it to the guard post or the knight's headquarters to claim the bounty. The people around the shop stared at this unusual sight, until Aldous went to the bartender and announced that today everyone here would get free drinks, which he didn't expect to give. He would give a large amount of money and people would never refuse free alcoholic beverages any time. They asked for Aldous's name, and he happily left the words Aldous so that they would cheer and encourage people for the man who defeated two great demons and toasted to his name. After that, the moment the news of the Bellseeker and the fourth wing was announced to the public, The capital city became lively with celebrations, and thanks to the people who witnessed all this power with their own eyes. His popularity skyrocketed, almost reaching everyone's ears. The people who planned to capture him had all given up, and this good news emerged. Aldous felt a little relieved, while Cesare was also happy because now he wouldn't be threatened by Aldous. Not only that, but Cesare was also asked questions about their relationship, about how he was with the person who defeated those demons, and they asked him about everything that Aldous told him not to do, interrupting his breakfast. Cesare mentioned that he actually came here with valuable information. Cesare realized fully that Aldous used him to make a name for himself, and now it would only be fair if Cesare received praise for telling him about the 3 great demon things as compensation. Cesare assured him that he knew how strong Aldous was, so he wouldn't dare to plan anything against him. It was only because he wanted to maintain a good relationship with him, and when it came to work, always trust him. Aldous thought this person was determined, so he agreed to tell him about the 2 monsters he defeated. Then Cesare asked him how he could hunt all 4 wings in such a short time. Aldous said it would cost 500 gold coins, which clearly was an outrageous amount of money that he thought Aldous might have. Aldous got from the conquests, and now even organizations around the country would happily recruit him. Cesare asked him if he had ever thought about changing jobs, but he remained silent. Cesare didn't want to interfere too much in his personal life now, so he asked Aldous if he wanted to get a good recommendation for a well-paying mission, or just the last of the 3 great red devouring demons that Aldous was interested in. To know more about it, Cesare said he would check it out if he wanted him to. Aldous said he didn't need it because his goal was to shut down anyone who might think of messing with him, and he had already achieved that. He didn't need to chase after another monster. But the red devouring demon was a little worried because Aldous had nailed it, and the twins stayed there when he returned. He was told that everything was going as planned, and he praised his lord for his hard work. However, the only problem Aldous ever faced was being surrounded every time you went to the city, because everyone treated him as their hero. He chuckled when called a hero for something trivial. So, he thought about what would happen if he was strong enough to be a true hero. Then, he asked her if there was something bothering her that brought Aldous out of his thoughts. And that was it when he told her about the Red Eater. Maybe this monster could appear on the full moon night of the 3rd day, so they had to stay alert to it. Now he wanted to spend time as easily as he had never been with twins for a long time. Then the twins came there. Seeing from the side of the door, they heard what Aldous had just said, and were ready to play with him. So the twins surrounded Aldous and started playing with him. After that, the 4 of them ended up playing house together, with Aldous and Cuckoo becoming the parents, while Philia and Rihanna as the children. Aldous seemed to have a hard time following the role-playing game, and his role as a father made him more nervous. He told Nail to say something as a mother too, and once he considered it as a command from his lord, Nail really changed, and started behaving as if she was their biological mother, with Aldous as the father of their twin children. He truly understood his role. Then Aldous and Philia were watering the plants together. Aldous started feeling tired, so he said he would take a short break now. I think playing house with the children is more tiring than fighting, and now he has to rest well so that he doesn't repeat the same mistakes as before. When he fell asleep, Aldous's twins came out and always wondered why he got sleepier after coming into this world. But anyway, he had already thought about this. Maybe there were some changes for him. He used his wind magic to temporarily shape a bed, and then put a blanket on it to make it as comfortable as he knew it would be, laughed at by Philia and Rihanna. He felt awkward just resting after a while. The twins wanted to see all of this, so they went to check what Aldous was doing. No one responded to them. He was just taking a nap. The twins could see that they might not have recovered from their fear of that strange object. The twins approached Aldous and looked at him. They felt like they were sleeping soundly playing with him, even now, and so the twins started pulling his cheeks, playing with the ribbon on his forehead, the forehead that he always kept in his head, and rested after a few minutes. Nail also saw the twins fall asleep. Aldous and this peaceful scene were not something that would be witnessed in the middle of the Caucasus forest, where monsters roamed. She thought the girls were really lucky to be taken in by Aldous. While the number of human suffering was immeasurable, she thought it was meaningful to reach out to the twins who happened to be in front of him. He was sure Aldous must not have thought about it when he received the twins, and his kindness was truly amazing. He felt good for them. While Nail put a blanket on them, she was also happy to focus on her mission of protecting the twins. However, she was curious about what kind of life the twins would lead with their Lord Aldous guiding them. They felt like she talked too much, but then she noticed something on Aldous's forehead under his band. There seemed to be a mark that she didn't know for sure was hidden for some reason. So, she put his band back on properly and went on her task of keeping them safe. Meanwhile, somewhere in the Caucasus forest, there would soon be another danger coming their way. Not just one entity, but hundreds or more, generated from a place that looked very similar to some laboratory or research center. And inside it, there was a completely transparent woman monster, seemingly waiting for something. In the deep of the forest of Caucasus, a dark shadow awaits, like a full moon at the sky. Now it was already night, and the forest felt somewhat unusual compared to Aldous's other days. He lay in his bed, knowing that something was not right out there. She came and told him the same, that it was a little noisy outside in the forest. Together, they could sense that something was approaching them from the actual forest, which were some wild animals and monsters. They weren't actually that strong individually, but considering their collective interest, the numbers were abnormal. Aldous knew he had to do something. He assigned the task of darting the twins to Nil, and if it became too dangerous, then he had to escape to the sky. After that, his ally went into the forest in this full moon state to see what was inside it. He realized that the monster was now too close, and shortly after, a hound appeared in front of everyone's eyes. They noticed that the hound's eyes seemed not to see him, but nevertheless, he had to strike it down. Aldous was familiar with these monsters. They weren't too dangerous since they couldn't see him, or perhaps they were just trying to escape. Aldous killed those dogs, and wondered what was happening that made them like this. He quickly became cautious. Not just one or two dogs, but the whole pack of monsters from the forest could handle all of this easily. But the problem here was if he used large-scale magic here, it would attract too much attention. And what's more important, these monster hunters would flee from something. So he flew up and headed towards his house, where Nail was already in the sky with his twin hands, apologizing for not being able to stop them. The Nail said it wanted to know what else to do on such a large scale. These monsters had never been seen before, so they had no choice but to stay away from their homes, which were now destroyed by many monsters, trampling on anything they built. In the past few days, the twins have been terrified after seeing their house destroyed like that, and their surroundings trampled upon. It lasted for a while until everything turned into ashes. Aldous knew he couldn't do anything about it. Then he heard the twins crying after losing their house again. Aldous went and reassured them that everything would be okay and they could rebuild it. After seeing the debris left behind, he had his concerns, but luckily their belongings were buried deep in the ground. Aldous noticed that there were some monsters down there in the rubble who lost their footing and died from being trampled upon. However, they seemed too quiet now. But when he looked to the other side of the forest, Aldous saw mysterious things approaching them. They had the same shape as humans, but were actually transparent. Aldous wondered what these things were, and he noticed that everything just passed through them, as if they weren't hostile. Aldous realized that these creatures were actually going towards the bodies of the monsters, and as they approached, their bodies rejected them. Aldous wondered what they were doing, and suddenly their bodies transformed, with sharp jaws and hundreds of teeth tearing into the flesh on the ground. The twins were scared to see these monsters devouring what was there, and as they ate, these dark things turned red in color, while the ones with black skin devoured them as if they had no sense of unity or intelligence. The monsters have just started devouring each other suddenly, and Aldous realizes that these monsters react to anything red. Now he understands that all of this must be the Red Devourer. and suddenly one of them recognizes Aldous and the others as their prey. The Red Devourer moves to attack Aldous, and he notices that their bodies are quite sturdy. It takes some extra strength to cut them into pieces. Aldous imagines that if it's this difficult, he might have a hard time fighting so many of them. He warns the girls that they have been recognized as enemies, so they need to take them and leave. Aldous flew over the forest and headed towards the place where these red eaters were coming from. He saw the number of these things increasing continuously, and during that time he felt a great source of magical power over the targeted area. Aldous arrived at the location and was surprised to see a structure like that. He thought it might be a laboratory, similar to the one he had seen before. There were plenty of red eaters around the building. Aldous wanted to try something different, so he focused his magical powers and compressed them into a small ball. It took a lot of concentration for him to send this compressed magic bomb into the building. The explosion caused a lot of damage to the area, but the structure remained standing. Aldous then formed hundreds of sharp stones and threw them at the building. He continued to attack the structure relentlessly, but it still stood strong. Aldous went closer to inspect the building and landed at the facility's entrance. He broke down the door with his foot, only to find another door in the dark room waiting for him.